How do we determine the maximum number of people that can fit in a specific room? How do architects justify the size of the rooms, stairs, corridors, especially if the building owner's budget is tight? What is the difference between gross floor area and net floor area? In this episode, we're going to get loaded with information on occupant load. Dito lang yan, sa ArchitecTuro. Ano nga ba ang occupant load? Occupant load is the maximum number of persons that may be allowed to occupy a particular building, structure, or facility, or portions hereof. Ang bawat gusali at mga silid sa loob nito ay may nakatalagang maximum occupant load o pinakamaraming bilang ng tao na maaaring sumakop sa loob nito. Bakit importanteng matutunan ang occupant load? Number 1, it is in the law. Ang National Building Code of the Philippines at Fire Code of the Philippines ay mga batas na dapat sundin. Ang mga batas na ito ay may mga specific na alituntunin o rules kung ano-ano ang occupant load factor per type of occupancy. It is important to read and know both of the codes as their rules are not similar all the time. And sometimes, upon comparison, we need to choose the more stringent occupant load factor in order to come up with the correct occupant load requirement of a building. Number 2, it guides the architects to correctly design the means of egress and correct number of fixtures in a building. The determined occupant load of each room per floor in a building is what the architects use to correctly determine the required width of the corridors, the required width of the doors, the required width of the stairs, the required number of exits, and even the required number of plumbing fixtures. Once you get the occupant load wrong, your building egress components will also be wrong. Compliance with the required minimums of these building components as mandated by the codes is truly important. The architect could be legally responsible for the damages incurred due to failure of design. For discussion regarding means of egress, please watch using the video link in the description below. Number 3, it guides the architects to correctly justify their design in terms of cost. Building owners and developers, especially of high-rise buildings and large-scale developments, are very particular with cost and budget. A 50mm wide excess of the required width of stairs could mean millions of construction costs on a high-rise building project. A 100mm wide excess of the required corridor width, repeated on several typical floors, could unnecessarily burden the owners on budget they could have spent on other important aspects of the building. As architects, we need to be sensitive on the financial implications of our design. We should constantly explore cost-effective solutions by equipping ourselves with the correct standards that we should use to justify our design. So ano-ano ang mga tamang steps sa pagdetermine ng tamang occupant loads sa isang gusali? As per the National Building Code, the occupant load permitted in any building or portion thereof shall be determined by dividing the floor area assigned to that used by the unit area allowed per occupant. With that said, the first step in getting the occupant load is to identify the correct occupancy of the building or its portions. We need to identify whether it's residential, business, mercantile, educational, places of assembly, at iba pa. For the National Building Code of the Philippines, you may refer to Rule 7 for the classification and general requirements of all buildings by use or occupancy. For the Fire Code of the Philippines naman, we may refer to Chapter 2, Division 8 to Division 20 for the occupancy classification and its definitions. The second step in determining the occupant load is to determine the occupant load factor of each room per floor. For the National Building Code, we may refer to Table 12.1, General Requirements for Occupant Loads and Exits. For the Fire Code of the Philippines naman, check the occupant load sections of Chapter 2, Divisions 8 to 20 for the required occupant load factors. Take for example these occupant load factors for Division 8, Places of Assembly. May mga instances na magkaiba ang requirement ng dalawang codes per type of occupancy. For example, the office space as per the National Building Code shall use the factor of 9.3 square meter per person. Sa Fire Code of the Philippines naman, generally ito ay may 9.3 square meter per person occupant load factor requirement din. Ngunit, may specific na classification na for more concentrated use of business occupancy as in the case of call centers, IT centers, BPOs, and other similar occupancies. We need to use the more stringent requirement or yung occupant load factor that will give us a bigger occupant load value. In that way, we can ensure that we will comply and not violate any of the codes, especially when we are using the occupant load to design the means of egress. Third step is to measure the areas in your design or your floor plans. Pero ang tanong, iisa lang ba ang method ng pagsukat ng area? Hindi. Based sa code, may dalawang specific na paraan para sukatin ang floor area per type of occupancy. Generally, the National Building Code of the Philippines requires that the floor areas shall be measured according to the gross floor area definition or GFA, while ang Fire Code of the Philippines naman ay specific per type of occupancy, kung gagamit ba ito ng definition ng GFA or ng net floor area. So ang tanong, ano ang difference ng gross floor area at net floor area? As per the Fire Code of the Philippines, GFA or gross floor area is the floor area within the inside perimeter of the outside walls of the building under consideration with no deduction for hallways, stairs, closets, thickness of interior walls, columns, elevator, and building services shops or other features, but excluding floor openings associated with atriums and communicating spaces. Basically, kapag sinabing gross floor area, kasama sa computation ng area ang hallways, stairs, corridors, closets, pati ang thickness ng walls. As for the net floor area naman, walang specific na definition sa glossary of terms ang Fire Code of the Philippines regarding dito. Ang definition ng net floor area ay kinuha natin sa definition ng NFPA 101 or Life Safety Code. Ang NFPA 101 ay isang referral code ng the Fire Code of the Philippines. As per the NFPA 101, net floor area is the floor area within the inside perimeter of the outside walls or the outside walls and firewalls of a building, or outside and or inside walls that bound an occupancy or incidental use area requiring the occupant load to be calculated using net floor area under consideration with deductions for hallways, stairs, closets, thickness of interior walls, columns, or other features. Sa madaling salita, ito ay ang visible floor area at hindi kasama ang mga common spaces, pati ang thickness ng walls inside the building. Ang Fire Code of the Philippines ay merong Division 8 or Places of Assembly, Division 9, Educational Occupancies, and Division 13, Detention and Correctional Occupancies, that uses the terms net floor area or net area for the purpose of determining the occupant load for these occupancies. The fourth step is to divide the determined room areas per floor by the required occupant load factors. Only then you will get the occupant load of the rooms per floor that you may now use to design the means of egress and other required fixtures of the building. Let's take a look at this example of a non-concentrated use business occupancy floor. Since the business occupancies uses the gross floor area definition in determining the floor areas, we will include the corridors, the stairs, and the thickness of walls in the area computations. The determined floor areas shall be divided by the occupant load factor of 9.3 square meters per person. So there you go, the importance of the occupant load and the methods to determine its correct value. Mahalagang dumaan sa tamang proseso sa pagkuha nito upang ating masiguro na tama at justifiable as per code ang ating building design. Maraming salamat sa panonood, and if you want to know more, please don't forget to like and subscribe. Bye!